In 1998, a programmer in Pennsylvania got his hands on a leaked internal Microsoft memo. What he read described a corporate strategy so calculated that he published it online the same week and basically said, everyone needs to see this right now. His name was Eric S. Raymond. He was an open source essayist, a hacker philosopher, one of the loudest voices in the free software movement. The documents he leaked became known as the Halloween documents, named for the week they surfaced. They revealed Microsoft's internal playbook for dealing with open source software, not competing with it, neutralizing it. The strategy had been described in the Department of Justice antitrust case against Microsoft using 3 words: embrace, extend, extinguish. Adopt the open standard, add proprietary features that only work in your ecosystem, then suffocate the original once everyone depends on your version. Raymond did not just leak these memos. He annotated them line by line, translating corporate strategy speak into plain language so that every developer in the world could understand what was being planned. The memos specifically recommended that Microsoft should, and I am paraphrasing their language here, de-commoditize protocols and applications, meaning take open standards that everyone shares equally and make them dependent on Microsoft's proprietary additions. Raymond called this the most important line in the entire document. He understood that this was not a one-time tactic, but a repeatable formula. And now, 25 years later, I want to walk you through that formula and then show you what Microsoft has done since. Because when you put those two things side by side, the pattern match is so precise it will make you deeply uncomfortable. Let us start with what Raymond was responding to. The Halloween documents were internal Microsoft memos primarily written by Vinod Valloppillil, a program manager at the company. They were requested by Senior Vice President Jim Alchin for the attention of Senior Vice President Paul Maries. These were not the musings of a junior employee. This was a strategy circulating at the executive level. The memos said in plain corporate English that open source was a credible long-term threat to Microsoft's revenue model. They acknowledged that the open source development process often produced technically superior software. They admitted that traditional FUD tactics, meaning fear, uncertainty, and doubt, would not work against open source because the code was right there for anyone to inspect. And then they outlined the counter strategy. The key passage recommended de-commoditizing protocols and applications. In Raymond's annotation, he explained what this meant in practice. If protocols and services are open and simple, customers can choose freely and Linux wins. If protocols and services are complex and proprietary, customers get locked in and Microsoft wins. He pointed out that Microsoft was essentially admitting that for them to win, the customer had to lose the ability to choose. Raymond connected this directly to what Microsoft had already done to Netscape. They embraced web standards with Internet Explorer, extended them with ActiveX and proprietary features that only worked on Windows, and extinguished the competition by making the web dependent on their browser. Netscape went from market dominance to irrelevance in 3 years. The memos confirmed this was not an accident. It was the formula, and the formula had a next target: open source itself. For about 15 years after the leak, Microsoft seemed to take a different approach than the memos suggested. Rather than quietly absorbing open source, they attacked it openly. Steve Ballmer called Linux a cancer in 2001 in the Chicago Sun-Times. Microsoft funneled support to the SCO Group's lawsuit against IBM and Linux through investor referrals and dubious licensing deals, helping fund legal warfare against the open source community. They threatened patent litigation against enterprises running open source. It was loud, it was hostile, and it was obvious. The Halloween documents did not recommend open hostility. The memos recommended de-commoditization. They recommended making Microsoft's versions of open protocols so feature-rich and so deeply integrated that the open originals could not keep up. The aggression of the Ballmer years was a deviation from the strategy the memos laid out. The real question was always what would happen when Microsoft got back on script. In 2014, that question got answered. Satya Nadella took over as CEO, and suddenly Microsoft loved open source. They joined the Linux Foundation, they released Visual Studio Code for free, they open-sourced .NET, and in 2018, they bought GitHub for $7.5 billion. the platform where virtually every major open source project in the world lives. The developer community largely celebrated. They said Nadella was different. They said this was a new Microsoft. But if you go back and read the Halloween documents with fresh eyes, what Microsoft did starting in 2014 looks less like a change of heart and more like a return to the original playbook. The Halloween documents did not just say beat open source. They said decommoditize the protocols and applications around it. Make the ecosystem dependent on your proprietary extensions. Now look at what Microsoft controls today. They own GitHub, the code hosting platform where over 150 million developers store their work. They built Visual Studio Code, used by roughly 76% of professional developers according to the most recent Stack Overflow survey, and embedded proprietary telemetry and a proprietary extension marketplace into an otherwise open-source editor. They created the Language Server Protocol, which is becoming the backbone of how code editors interact with programming languages, designed and governed by Microsoft. They built TypeScript, which has become the default way to write JavaScript at scale, maintained and directed by Microsoft. They created Windows Subsystem for Linux, which lets you run Linux inside Windows so comfortably that millions of developers stopped running Linux on their machines. Each one of these looks generous in isolation. But the Halloween documents gave us the lens through which to evaluate moves like these. The question is not whether a tool is free. The question is whether it makes open protocols and open platforms dependent on proprietary editions controlled by a single company. And when you ask that question, every single one of these moves fits the pattern Raymond exposed. You are not looking at generosity. You are looking at decommoditization, executed at a scale the authors of those memos could not have imagined. And now the pattern is accelerating. GitHub Copilot, made generally available in 2022, was trained on code that developers uploaded to GitHub, much of it under open source licenses that never contemplated being used as training data for a commercial AI product. A class action lawsuit was filed in November 2022 by Matthew Butterick and the Joseph Saveri law firm, alleging that Copilot violates the terms of those open source licenses by stripping attribution and copyright notices from code it reproduces. But regardless of how the courts rule, the structural play is already in motion. Copilot is not just a feature, it is the connective layer. Developers use Copilot inside VS Code, connected to repositories on GitHub, deploying to Azure, managed through Microsoft 365. Each layer works best with the other layers. Each layer is harder to leave than the last. This is decommoditization in real time. The open source code still exists underneath, but the value, the speed, the competitive advantage now lives in the proprietary AI layer on top. When Microsoft updated Copilot's terms of service to grant themselves broad rights over data flowing through the tool, most developers clicked accept without reading. When they gated advanced features behind expensive enterprise tiers, developers paid because their workflows already depended on it. The open source community has raised alarms, but the dependency was already built. This brings us to right now. And this is why this matters to you personally. Microsoft is embedding Copilot into everything. Windows, Office, Edge, Bing, Azure, GitHub, Teams. It is becoming the intelligence layer across their entire product universe. And that layer is entirely closed. You cannot self-host it. You cannot fork it. You cannot audit what it does with your data. The open source tools underneath still technically exist, but they are increasingly insufficient without the proprietary intelligence on top. Go back to Raymond's annotation of the Halloween documents. He wrote that for Microsoft to win, protocols and services must be complex and proprietary. What is a closed AI model sitting on top of open source code? Accessible only through Microsoft's platform, if not that. The extinguish phase was never going to look like a press conference where Microsoft bans Linux. It looks like a world where open alternatives exist in theory, but cannot compete in practice because they lack the integrated AI, the seamless cloud deployment, the network effects of a platform where 150 million developers already live. You do not have to be locked out of open source. You just have to find that open source alone is no longer enough. The Halloween documents describe this endgame. Raymond made sure the world could read it. And 25 years later, most of the world forgot. So, what do? Because I am not going to leave you with just a warning. You deserve a plan. First, diversify your code hosting. Do not keep everything on GitHub. Codeberg is a nonprofit alternative. Gitia and Forgejo let you self-host. It takes an afternoon to set up a mirror, and it means your code has a home that no single corporation controls. Second, audit your editor. VS Code is excellent, but VS Codium strips out the proprietary telemetry and marketplace restrictions. NeoVim and Helix are fast, capable alternatives with strong plugin ecosystems. Try one for a real project. You might find you do not miss what you thought you needed. Third, explore local AI tools. Copilot is convenient, but open source alternatives are closing the gap fast. Projects like Continue, Tabby, and local models running through Llama give you code assistance without sending your work to Microsoft servers. Fourth, read the terms of service. When a tool touches your code, your prompts, and your deployment patterns, the terms are not legal boilerplate. They are the rules governing ownership of what you create. 5 minutes of reading can prevent serious problems later. Fifth, fund independent infrastructure. Donate to the Software Freedom Conservancy, the Free Software Foundation, or the maintainers of the tools you use daily. Microsoft can absorb underfunded projects precisely because they are underfunded. Your dollars are a direct vote for keeping the ecosystem open. In 1998, Raymond received a leaked Microsoft memo and did something remarkably simple. He published it with annotations so clear that anyone willing to read could understand the strategy being described. He showed the world a formula and warned that Microsoft would keep running it. They did. Decommoditize protocols and applications. Make the proprietary version so integrated, so convenient, so deeply embedded that the open original cannot compete. Then let dependency do the rest. That formula was written down 25 years ago. It was confirmed as authentic by Microsoft itself. And today, the tools you rely on, the platform where your code lives, the AI that finishes your functions, they match that formula with a precision that should give every developer pause. Raymond saw the blueprint and made sure you could see it too. The building is now almost finished, and most of its residents moved in voluntarily. The good news is that blueprints work in both directions. Once you can see the architecture, you can choose to build something different. If this video made you think, hit subscribe, because this is the kind of story I will keep digging into. Drop a comment and tell me where you stand. Do you think the Halloween documents still matter? Or is this all just ancient history? I read every comment, and the conversations down there are half the reason I make these videos.